You ever get that feeling when everything is going just fine, and then bam, the universe decides to throw you under the bus? Yeah, that was me that night, driving home after a long-ass day, my mind half asleep, radio mumbling some oldies, and the smell of stale coffee filling the car from the cup I spilled earlier. Classic. I'm Marcus Wilson, 40 years old, average guy with a not-so-average job. But hey, we'll get to that part later. So there I was, cruising down the highway, just me and my thoughts, when I spotted it. Red and blue, flashing lights. In my rearview mirror. Oh, for fuck's sake, I muttered. It's like cops have a sixth sense for ruining peaceful nights. They weren't even subtle about it, blaring sirens and flashing those obnoxious lights like it was a damn parade. All right, Marcus, play it cool, I told myself, flipping on my turn signal and pulling over to the side of the road. I grabbed my registration and license from the glove box because, let's face it, I wasn't about to give these guys any reason to get extra annoying. I'm a rules guy. I know the drill. Then they showed up. Two white officers stepping out of their car with the kind of swagger that screamed, "We own this road." One was tall and wiry with a mustache that looked like it had been glued on as a joke. The other was stocky, bald, and had that bad cop in training vibe. They didn't look like the friendly neighborhood type, let's put it that way. Mustache man leaned into my window, flashlight in hand, like he was auditioning for a crime drama. "License and registration, sir," he barked, putting an extra punch on the sir like he was doing me a favor. I handed over my documents without a word. "Evening, officers. What seems to be the problem?" I asked, keeping my tone calm and neutral. No point poking the bear. Stocky bald guy circled the car, shining his flashlight into every corner like he was expecting to find a stash of weapons or a pile of gold bars. Spoiler alert. Nothing there but a couple of old coffee cups and some gum wrappers. "Where are you headed?" Mustache asked, eyeing me like I'd just confessed to robbing a bank. "Home, long day at work," I said, still calm. "Uh-huh," he grunted, like I'd said something suspicious. He took my license and walked back to the patrol car, leaving Baldy behind to stare me down. The guy didn't say a word, just stood there, all puffed up like he was waiting for me to make a wrong move. Minutes passed, long ones. You know? The kind where your brain starts making up worst-case scenarios? I kept watching them in my rearview mirror as they chatted and laughed like they were deciding which donut to grab after this, and then Mustache came back. "Step out of the vehicle," he said. That was when my patience started to fray. "Is there a reason for this?" I asked, my voice firm but not aggressive. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, sir," Baldy snapped, grabbing the door handle like he was ready to yank me out himself. I sighed. "Sure, officer, let's do this your way." I stepped out, hands up, fully aware of how this looked to anyone driving by. A middle-aged black guy getting cuffed on the side of the road for no goddamn reason. The cuffs clicked shut around my wrists. "You're under arrest," Mustache declared like he'd just won a prize. "For what?" I asked, incredulous. "We'll figure that out later," Baldy smirked, shoving me into the back of their patrol car. As the doors slammed shut behind me, I thought, all right, assholes, let's play. Let me tell you something. Being thrown into the back of a cop car feels exactly as dehumanizing as it looks. The hard plastic seat was freezing cold, and the smell? Let's just say it was a potent cocktail of old sweat and despair. I sat there, wrists digging into the cuffs, watching Mustache and Baldy through the windshield as they stood outside, chatting like this was just another Tuesday night for them. They finally got in, Mustache taking the wheel. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror with a smirk that said, "Gotcha." Baldy, riding shotgun, twisted around to look at me. "You got any weapons or drugs in the car?" he asked, his tone dripping with mock concern. I raised an eyebrow. "You already checked the car. What do you think?" Baldy grinned. "Just making sure. You people tend to forget things like that." I bit my tongue so hard I thought I tasted blood. You people. Classic. If there's one thing racists love, it's pretending their casual bigotry is just harmless banter. The ride to the station was slow, almost like they were savoring the moment. Every pothole felt like a personal attack, jarring my spine while they laughed at some inside joke. I sat there, silent but fuming. I've dealt with this kind of shit before. Black man, nice car, middle of nowhere. It's like a magnet for a trouble. But this was next level. When we arrived at the station, they hauled me out of the car like I was a sack of potatoes. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow on the chipped linoleum floors. The place smelled like burnt coffee and regret. They dragged me to the booking area, where a bored-looking officer sat behind a desk, chewing gum like it was her life's mission. Mustache handed over my documents with a flourish, like he'd just caught a notorious criminal. "Marcus Wilson," he announced, his voice unnecessarily loud. "Brought him in for, He paused, clearly struggling to come up with a legitimate reason. "Suspicious behavior." The woman behind the desk raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Instead, she handed me a clipboard. "Fill this out," she muttered. I stared at her. "With what? My hands are cuffed." She sighed like I'd just asked her to solve world hunger and motioned for Baldy to uncuff me. As I filled out the paperwork, I couldn't help but notice the way Mustache and Baldy stood off to the side, whispering and chuckling to themselves, probably patting each other on the back for their stellar police work. Once the paperwork was done, they shoved me into a holding cell. The door clanged shut behind me, and I took a moment to assess my surroundings. The cell was small, grimy, and smelled like it hadn't been cleaned since the Reagan administration. A couple of guys were sprawled out on the benches, one snoring loudly, the other eyeing me with mild curiosity. I sat down in the corner, trying to ignore the heat crawling up my neck. My mind was racing. What the hell was their endgame? Were they planning to keep me here all night, hoping I'd break down? Or was this just about humiliating me? Time crawled. An hour? 2? Who knows? At some point, Mustache returned, leaning casually against the bars. "So, Marcus," he drawled, his tone dripping with condescension. "What's a guy like you doing in a car like that?" I looked up at him, my face unreadable. "You mean a black guy like me?" I shot back. His smirk faltered for a second before he recovered. "Hey, don't make this about race, buddy." I chuckled darkly. "Trust me, I didn't. You did that all on your own." His jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Instead, he walked away, muttering something to Baldy, who laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. As I sat there, anger bubbling just beneath the surface, I reminded myself to stay calm. This wasn't my first rodeo, and I knew how this game worked. Let them have their fun. Because when this was over, they wouldn't be laughing anymore. Morning came, and let me tell you, nothing wakes you up like the clang of a cell door and Baldy barking, "Time to go, superstar." They dragged me out, slapped cuffs, back on like it was some kind of sport, and shuffled me into a van with zero regard for comfort. Honestly, I've had better rides on public buses. The courthouse was buzzing when we arrived. Lawyers in suits, bored-looking clerks, and the occasional civilian wandering around like they'd stumbled into the wrong building. I was marched straight into the courtroom, where a judge, an older woman with a face that could cut glass, was already seated. She looked like she'd seen it all and wasn't impressed by any of it. Mustache and Baldy strutted in like they were heroes of the day. They gave their statements with all the confidence of guys who thought routine traffic stop was a legal slam dunk. "We observed the defendant behaving suspiciously," Mustache said, his tone as self-righteous as ever. "Refused to cooperate. Had to be detained for officer safety." Suspiciously, I couldn't help but mutter under my breath. "Like driving while black suspicious?" The judge raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. She motioned for me to speak, so I stood, fixing Mustache and Baldy with a calm, level stare. "Your Honor, I complied with every request. They had no probable cause, no explanation. Just cuffs and a ride downtown. If that's suspicious, then we've got bigger problems than me." Mustache rolled his eyes, Baldy smirked, but the judge wasn't buying their act. She turned to my lawyer, who handed her a folder. A very specific folder. "Your Honor," my lawyer began, "the defendant would like to submit evidence of his identity." The judge flipped through the papers, her expression tightening with every page. I caught the flicker of panic on Mustache's face as she glanced his way. "I'm going to need clarification," she said, her tone sharp. I nodded, standing tall. "I am Marcus Wilson, Special Agent, United States Secret Service." The room froze. You could have heard a pin drop. Mustache's jaw practically hit the floor and Baldy went pale. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Officer," she said, addressing Mustache, "did you know this when you arrested him?" Mustache stammered something incoherent, but it didn't matter. The tide had turned, and everyone in the room could feel it. The judge straightened. "We'll be reconvening tomorrow to address this properly. Officers, you may want to start considering legal representation." And just like that, the roles flipped. They'd walked in smug, but now they looked like kids caught stealing candy. As they shuffled out, I allowed myself the smallest, most satisfying smirk. Game on. The next day, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, legal types, even a few curious onlookers. Mustache and Baldy shuffled in, looking like deer caught in headlights. The swagger? Gone. Replaced by a nervous energy that made me want to laugh out loud. The judge wasted no time. She addressed the court with a voice sharp enough to cut steel. "After reviewing the evidence, it's clear this case isn't about a traffic violation. It's about a gross abuse of power." My lawyer stood cool as ice. "Your Honor, the officers detained a federal agent without cause, falsified claims, and violated his rights. My client isn't just innocent, he's the victim." The courtroom buzzed, whispers spreading like wildfire. Mustache tried to interject, but the judge silenced him with a glare that could have melted concrete. "Officer," she said, pinning him with a look, "do you have any explanation for your actions?" He stammered, "We..." We didn't know who he was, Your Honor. The judge leaned forward. And you thought that justified your behavior? Ignorance doesn't excuse misconduct. Baldy tried to pipe up. We were just following protocol. Protocol? The judge snapped. Your protocol doesn't include racial profiling and fabricating charges. You've embarrassed this court and your department. By now, they looked like they wanted to sink into the floor. The judge turned to me. Agent Wilson, the court apologizes for this injustice. Rest assured, disciplinary action will follow. I nodded, my voice steady. Thank you, Your Honor. I trust the system will handle them appropriately. The gavel slammed down and it was over. Mustache and Baldy were officially on the hook, suspended pending investigation and likely facing charges themselves. As I walked out, the reporters swarmed, shouting questions. I didn't stop, just threw one line over my shoulder. Sometimes the bad guys wear badges, but the law doesn't play favorites. That shut them up. And as I got into my car, free and vindicated, I couldn't help but smile. Justice served.